So, good day, everyone. We're here for another episode of the DVD show. So, for today, we have a former Ateneo Blue Eagles courtside reporter, and currently, she is a PVL insider and also an AVC insider for Signal TV. So, I'll now welcome here to the DVD show, Frannie Reyes. Thank you for joining me here on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you again. So, yeah, to start things off, I've seen you covering the AVC and the recently concluded PVL. So, how's life been like for you? Like maybe on and off the volleyball court. What have you been doing these past few weeks?
Yeah, so outside of sports coverage, I have a day
Mm-hmm.
job, you know. Actually, you'll find that a lot of people in, I guess, the sports world are doing a lot of different things. So that's what's
Yeah.
keeping me busy. Um, Outside of that, I don't know. I guess I'm just me, my dog, taking care of my dog, getting more sleep, enough rest
Mm-hmm.
to do all the things that I'm trying to do right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great because I hear in the interviews that people that work in sports they try other things. So sometimes their course isn't even related to like being on behind the mic and covering the games, but yeah, there's like their passion talaga to be in sports. So what would you say is like the reason then that people try out these new things and when you're in that industry they also have other stuff that keep them busy.
Yeah, well, I'm one of the people who didn't take any course related to sports. I
Yeah.
graduated management economics in Ateneo. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, what drew me into sports was really I grew up um, watching the UAAP with my
Mm-hmm.
family. It was something that we did every weekend. So that kind of started my interest, you know, more than I guess like international leagues or other sports. It was like that sense of community in the UAAP that really drew me in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also what draws a lot of other people in. You don't have to be an athlete to be in the
Yeah.
sports. It's everyone's a spectator, really. And I'm lucky enough that I get to also cover the sports and talk about it with um, other people in the industry. So I would say it's the sense of community. But you also have a lot of athletes who they used to compete, but now they're analysts, and they're also doing other things outside of sports. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting when you talk to people about their lives outside and you find out that, oh my gosh, everyone's doing something. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, we're all covering sports because we're all passionate about it.
Mm-hmm. How about your opinion on like people? There are people that would say that they know the traditional jobs that the way where you work like 8 to 5 in a job, but like when you work for sports, diba, like you're on call like kung kailan may game or kung kailan may kailangan i-cover kahit anong oras yan, like you need to be there. And sometimes people don't get, like I'm pretty sure you know that there are people that don't get it that you earn a certain amount of money for like the work you do, not necessarily the time you work. So how would you explain to the people that having this new growth of like content creation or like broadcasting that you could still have a your own niche and your own like way to earn a substantial amount of income and live your life?
Yeah, well, I would say it's also a lot of it's very much the growth mindset that's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
When there weren't any sports, I still wanted to be, involved in sports. So I found opportunities in producing, a bit of sports writing.
Okay, yeah.
When I couldn't be a reporter
Yeah.
in the UAP, I was taking pictures and producing videos on um, in the arena. So you can make a living out of sports, but at the end of the day, it's really, what makes you happy. Are you living to work or working to live? Like
Mhm.
all, it's about that mindset of like growing, but also like having that balance within yourself and in your life.
Yeah.
People are also very like-minded in the sense that you should have that balance.
Mhm.
So they're very supportive if you want to take a break or if you want to try other things. You're not restricted to just, what you started out as. And everyone
Okay.
tries to give each other like more opportunities also. So, you're never, again, going back to that sense of community, you're never alone in sports.
Mhm.
And people genuinely want you to succeed in the industry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, that's like the dream for me. Like after I graduate or now, like I got an opportunity to work in sports. But yeah, I also hear from others that they are able to try out other things. Like my course is business management, so I could do something like related to it, even if I pursue my passion in sports. But yeah, you mentioned earlier that you love the sense of community in the UAP, which made you fall in love and try to apply to be a UAP courtside reporter. But like before that, were you like an athlete or what like gravitated you to sports and you be able to have this love of being able to tell the stories of the players on the floor?
Yeah, hmm. Could you repeat that? Oh my gosh. Let me think about it a bit more.
Oh yeah, because you said that you were gravitated to the UAAP because of the sense of community and you enjoyed the games and the fanfare, I
Um,
guess. So yeah, what started that? Were you like an athlete? Were you just like a fan? Like what made you like have that sense of passion in sports?
my cousin competed in the UAAP. He was part of the Blue Eagles, part of the five-peat era. So that's what really started
Mm.
it. My family, my whole family, we call ourselves like a barangay, would come together just to watch his games.
Oh.
And seeing like my family so passionate about it, and then seeing everyone else, um, this like even the Lasalians on the other side of Araneta, like it still felt like everyone was just here because we all enjoyed what we were watching. We
Mhm.
all wanted to be there. So that's really what started it. And then I always joked with my friends back in grade school, I'm gonna be a courtside reporter. And then
Mhm.
come college, not knowing that, okay, the opportunity presented itself. So I was like, okay, might as well give it a shot. You never know. And then
Mhm.
I got it. So I guess maybe it was a foreshadowing. Maybe like younger me knew it was gonna happen, but quite happy that it did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's really great. But then yung sinasabi mo that you really were telling your friends kahit nung bata ka pa that you wanted to be behind the mic and report for any of the universities. So where yung passion rin naman of being able to tell these stories and being able to be comfortable when public speaking and speaking in front of the camera. How about that? Was that with you already in an early age and why you were I don't know you enjoyed that?
I think for me, yeah. Growing up, I used to join like musical theater and I was kind of used to, or like I kind of was used to being on a stage, or
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't necessarily like afraid of public speaking, which
Yeah.
definitely helped me. Although I will say, like, the first time you get in front of the camera, it's a
Mm-hmm.
completely different experience. And that's when, like, all my nerves hit, no? But it helped me that I kind of had that experience, kind of had that background,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit in like musical theater and all that, that allowed me to fake it till I made it, basically.
Yeah, I hear that line from the people that were in the industry and they tried out for the UAP court side. But what how about you? What was the process of finally, sending that application until you made it already and you were announced as the courtside reporter for Ateneo in season 81 and then yeah, 82.
Yeah, so I remember one of my friends who was a manager at the time for the basketball team messaged me. He said, like, why don't you just try? Like, it's now or never.
Mm-hmm.
I was a junior. I was ready to do my junior term abroad.
Oh,
So
okay,
in
yeah,
my
yeah.
head, it was like, okay, if I don't get this, it's fine. I'm gonna spend
Yeah.
a semester abroad. If I do get this, going abroad can wait. And
Mm-hmm.
then it was a process, I guess, of me relearning the game. So I'm not
Mm,
like
okay.
watching all those years. I wasn't very like about the technical side of things. But
Yeah.
now that I would have to report about it, I made sure I studied all these things, rewatched old UAAP clips, rewatched the former courtside reporters.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely helped me. I remember we took nga a diagnostic test to test us on our basketball knowledge,
Oh,
which is kind of funny. And they
yeah.
even asked us questions like, "Who are three key players in your from your school?" And
Oh,
then
okay,
we'd write
okay.
that down, and then they'd have us come into a room and be like, "Okay, why'd you put these three names down?" So it was really like a test of not just your basketball knowledge, but also maybe your UAP knowledge.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then after that, were like several rounds of, I can't remember the homework that they would give us, but it was like several rounds that we had to go through, like workshops and then screening. And then I remember
Mm.
when we thought we were gonna hear about who the new courtside reporters would be, they decided like, okay, we need more help. Can you do another report on like one of the ongoing games this weekend?
Oh,
Blah blah
okay.
blah. So it was really like mentally like you have to be mentally strong, I guess, because like, oh my god, if you really want this, you have to keep going, no matter
Mm-hmm.
how tiring it might be. And then I was lucky enough to be part of season 81. I remember for season 82, there was like a switch to more, okay, we want the courtside reporters to also do um video content.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're familiar with like the season 82 vlogs,
Yeah, the
at
one on
least for
YouTube.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like for
Yeah.
me and my batchies who came back from season 81,
Yeah.
they asked us to um, create vlogs also, and that would
Yeah.
be like our test to see if we would
Ah,
make
okay.
if we would pass for season 82. So I remember I went but tomorrow I asked the basketball team if I could like go to one of their practices, and I was like shooting them, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And then I saw the volleyball girls too, so I was like, "I'm gonna shoot you guys." And they're like, "What? You're vlogging now?" It's like, "No, guys, come on, it's for UAP. You gotta help me." And yeah, I guess I all my years of watching YouTube have helped me in order to like make a decent vlog, and then the rest is history.
Yeah. You mentioned about the grueling process of having all those rounds, and they made you do a lot of requirements in order to find that position of being the courtside reporter. No, wala lang kayong makukuha. So do you think that wouldn't be meant for everyone? Like some people would, feel tired about it, or mawawala na sila ng gana to pursue it. But like for you also, like what was the passion? Was that like the passion talaga with the UAP that what kept you going and have that, mentality na I'll keep trying until, sabihin na nila wala na or sabihin na nila that I'm already part of it.
I think everyone has their own reason for joining. Um, Everyone has their own reason for wanting the position, no? But for me, it was definitely that like goal to like be a part of the UAAP somehow. Because like I'm not an
Mhm.
athlete. Like there's no
Yeah.
way you could see me like on the volleyball court. But I really, really wanted to be a part of it. I remember back in either 2008 or 2009, it was the back to back of Ateneo. And then I saw
Mhm.
Jessica Mendoza like on the
Yeah.
court when Ateneo won. And I was like, okay, I wanna experience that. I wanna
Mhm.
be a part of everything that's going on.
Mhm.
So I always had that goal in mind. Um, for some, if you really want it, definitely you have to work for it. Because I know some people who kind of interested in it, but
Yeah.
then they didn't even like take the time to like study the sport or
Mhm.
understand like their school's team, and
Mhm.
that was to their detriment because then they weren't able to um, you know make it through the rest of the rounds.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
you have to be dedicated to it, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great that you really have that, inner, what do you call this, like your inner desire of why you wanted to be in the UAP. And yeah, even yeah, me, as I talked to you about earlier, that I also want to be there, and hopefully by this time this is out that I got in there. But for you, since you applied for a UAP and you got the job, and what was your first reaction when you found out? Like, was it through a call, through an email, and like, did you tell your friends, did you tell your family that you were happy since it's been a dream of yours?
Oh my gosh, they texted me. They were like, "Can you come to the office?" So I was like, "Oh my god, is this another like round that I have to do?" So I was just like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I'll do it. I'll make time for it before my class." And then they like put us in a room, and then we were all kind of just there, like, "Okay, so what's going on?" And then that's when they told us that like we were the courtside reporters. So
Okay.
yeah, when I got to school, I kind of you're not really supposed to tell anyone yet
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you have to wait for like workshops them to announce. Actually, they saying well, what they said before back in ABS-CBN was like, if for as long as we haven't announced it yet, we can still remove you. For as long as like you didn't do your first game, we can still remove you because that's how seriously they take it, and all the training and workshops.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried my best not to tell anyone. Although when my friends saw me that day, like two of my friends, they already knew. So like they could see it on my face. So I was just like,
Yeah.
I can't tell anyone.
Yeah. 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 How about the workshops and those the process before you, like, your first game, as you mentioned? Like, did you do your own, like, yeah, you said that you watched the games before applying, but like even that, did you continue, like, continuing to grow and continuing to progress? And how did also they help you continue to improve since they saw your performance naman with the screening and the auditions?
I'd like to think there's like three parts to it. So there's preparing for auditions and then passing, and you thinking like, okay, I've made it. And then you
Yeah.
go through workshops, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it's like the same thing again. So you're like, okay, when you're done with workshops and you reach your first game, you're like, okay, I made it again.
Yeah.
And then you do your first game, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So it's
Yeah.
a constant like process of learning and improving your craft, the way you write, the way you report. Um, the workshops helped. I remember we had Nico Ramos and Angelique Manto talk. So those were super helpful for us understanding, what's in the mind of the anchor and how us as the reporters can connect to them. Um, Understanding also what maybe was going through Angelique's mind as the courtside reporter, and understanding
Mm-hmm.
on that end, like, okay, what are the questions or what are the ways we can approach our athletes and stuff like that. So super, super helpful. But again, like, I think the real test is really when you do your first report, because
Mm-hmm.
then you finally like experienced it, and then you get the ball rolling and you go from there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah, you mentioned that you go from there and it's your first game. Was your first game the Adamson game? Ateneo Adamson.
That we lost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was your first game. Yeah, if I remember correctly. So, how about with getting to know these players and these coaches? Like, were you already friends with them beforehand? That's why you're more comfortable, and they're more comfortable with sharing their stories to you, or did you just develop that relationship when these practices and these games started, and yeah, they gained their trust with you?
I had to work for it, definitely. Some of the coaches were familiar with me, or at least familiar with my cousin. So some of them were
Mm-hmm.
his coaches, some of them were his teammates. So it was nice to like see familiar faces. I remember my first interview with Coach Tab. Like I was in a room interviewing him, and at the end of it, I felt like I just did like orals, and he was grading me because that's, I don't know, maybe that's just Coach Tab. He's like a professor,
Yeah.
so you think that it's like every time you talk to him, he's testing you.
Mm-hmm.
With the players, I would say in that season 81, basketball team, I was only friends with like two of the managers and maybe like Tyler Tio because I knew Tyler from high school. So it was
Oh,
really
okay.
like a challenge of how do I make sure that, you know, these players are comfortable enough to share with me like their stories, share their thoughts, but also, you know, making sure that they can trust me enough not to say anything, you know, bad about them or something that they don't
Yeah.
want me to talk about. So it was a lot of I was pretty diligent, like attending their practices, making sure that I was there also uh, after practice dinner. I rode the bus with them, anything that, you know, just so that they could see that, you know, I'm sacrificing my time too, and I'm doing what I can to like not get
Mm-hmm.
close to them, but to
Yeah.
get on a level where okay, we can be friends and they can share all these things with me. And then with the volleyball girls, admittedly, I was more intimidated by the volleyball girls. With
Oh,
the
okay.
basketball team, because it's like okay, this is like something I'm familiar with. Where the volleyball girls, it's season 81. They had a new coach, so Coach O.
Mm.
It would be Bea's last year, Maddie's last year, so they had a lot riding
Yeah.
on that season. So coming in, like I kind of already knew just how much the season meant to them. I mean, the UAP means a lot, of course, to the athletes, but there was a different pressure, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And like the basketball team, I was friends with like one or two of the managers, but I did my best again to like show up to practice, to talk to them, to be there for after practice dinner. Um, and yeah, just really like showing them that I'm going through it with them also. I
Mm-hmm.
always tell people na an underrated skill for courtside reporting or anything I guess in like sports media is dapat marunong kang makisama. If you don't
Yeah.
if you're not willing to like adjust to how people are, they're not going to be comfortable with
Yeah,
you.
they're
And
not gonna adjust to you.
right,
Yeah.
and you're as the reporter,
Yeah.
you should be the one adjusting.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, prior to college, like I struggled speaking Tagalog. It just wasn't
Oh,
something that
okay.
I was comfortable speaking. But in college, and then mas lalo na with like the athletes who you know come from all different backgrounds, I kind of was forced to really like improve my Tagalog. And I remember like
Yeah.
Mike and Matt Nieto would like make fun of me, and I was like, taga-Poveda talaga to. And then they would like correct me. But then like
Yeah.
them being able to joke with me like that also helped. So,
Yeah, for sure.
you know, for you especially, I know you're waiting, but that's like
Yeah.
my top underrated tip.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I understand, and I could see naman while you were saying it, and I was thinking about like why it's important, and yeah, for sure. And even if me, I know at least a couple of the players now because of the Lasallian and the podcast. Like, it's still different if you're the one there, and you're the
Mhm.
one helping them. Even if now it's I don't know if it's still different, but correspondence different from courtside because I guess of the pandemic. So yeah, it's a different atmosphere. And you mentioned a lot about also I like about the time that the part where you said sacrificing your time. So maybe you could elaborate on it and tell the audience on how strenuous I guess or grueling it is also to be courtside reporter since syempre yung practice nila hindi naman nakadepende sa'yo. And what if
Yep.
you want to hang out or you want to have an org activity, like you need to go to them and be in their practice. So how was it like for you, academics, leisure time, and then courtside?
Admittedly, I had to sacrifice one of my orgs because it just wasn't doable anymore.
Yeah.
But um these athletes train like twice a day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um it's rare that they have day offs, but like I'll be there with them. Like I don't attend their morning trainings because
Yeah, yung early morning.
I'll try to move my classes to the morning if I can.
Mm-hmm.
So like from 6 to 9 I'm with the teams, eating dinner with
Mm-hmm.
them. Sometimes I get home at like 10 or 11.
Wow.
Yeah, and not just that, like the schedule of the games. So it's Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But on Wednesdays, the games can be at 4
And
or at 2.
two.
Or
Yeah.
season 82, there were 3 games on
Oh
Wednesday.
yeah. Their
So
morning.
yeah,
Mm.
I had to, work around my schedule and figure out how I could make it work because I'm not an athlete nor am I a
Mm-hmm.
manager, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
also had to like prove to my profs that like, okay, I'm still taking my classes seriously. Um, I might miss this one, like really explaining to them and really making sure that they know that I'm on top of things. Did help to have like teachers
Mm.
or profs who were UAAP fans. So that was like helpful to me. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, when you take on the courtside role, you're understanding like the responsibility and you have to honor that responsibility. The league, to your teams, but in the first place, why you're in the league is because you're a student. So you have to honor your studies first too.
Yeah, for sure. And yun nga, like sa athletes then naririnig ko like sila Ben Phillips, he'd always say like give me the work in advance if we don't have busy practice this week because next week we'll have games or twice a day practices. So I could be advanced already with the schoolwork that are due. So yeah, I understand what you're saying there. But you mentioned about the first game in Adamson. So and you also continued being a courtside for volleyball and in the following season. So what would you say was the game or the moment that you told yourself na I could do this, like you had the confidence in yourself because you have mentioned like the nerves were there with you in the first game, like sobrang kinakabahan ka pa. So yeah, what was that moment or that game for you?
Oh man, I don't know if I could go back to basketball season 81. That feels so long ago. Um, there was a game, I think it was an Ateneo UST game back in season 81.
Mm-hmm.
My anchor was Nico Ramos.
Yeah.
And I forgot who the analyst was, but sometimes kasi Nico or the anchor likes to check our reports. I don't know how it works now for the correspondents, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, they'd like to like read it so that they have an idea of what we'll talk about in the pregame, so they'll know how to lead us in.
Mm-hmm.
And he just like glanced at it and then like, okay, you're good. Like one
Mm-hmm.
minor grammatical error because he's an editor, right? So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I
Mm-hmm.
can do this. Um, I can speak more, maybe more on like volleyball and season 82 basketball. So season 81 volleyball, there was a game where Kim Hekeliana was playing really well. Kim Hekeliana was also the only player on our team who was from the Cinderella run a few years
77,
prior. Yes, with
76.
Eliza.
Yeah.
So she was playing really well. It just so happened it was also like the fifth anniversary or something like that of the Cinderella run. So
Mm,
I
okay.
mentioned it in the broadcast, and Martin Javier, who was the anchor, picked up on it. So he expounded on it more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's how I knew that, okay, like I'm understanding, I'm getting this right. Like I wouldn't, maybe not that like, okay, I can do this, but it was more of a, in my head, okay, this is how I can help the anchor tell the story. This is how I can help the panel. This is how I can, really highlight how special like this game is. And I was really like proud of that moment, like knowing that okay, the anchor was able to talk about it for like more, and Kim was doing so well with basketball. Um, I don't know. I came into it thinking that I was like a senior na din because I was a senior, but I also
Yeah,
knew it
yeah.
was my last UAAP year. So I came into it thinking like, okay, I gotta make my reports as good as I can make them. And then on my very
Mm,
last game, I wanted to ask like Tito Miko Halili to check my report. I also wanted to ask Nico, and they were both like, "We're not gonna check it. Like, kaya mo na yan. You don't need us to check your reports." And I was
yeah,
like, "But it's my last game. Like, you guys have to
yeah.
read it." It's like, Franny, you don't need us to check it anymore. You're good. You're fine. So like I was really like, oh my god, okay, I got this. And
Yeah.
I guess you have those aha moments during games. When I
Mm-hmm.
did volleyball, when I did PVL, I think it was the cream line ba? It was the cream line versus PLDT game in Inares Antipolo, and I just so happened to be no. Who was playing well? I think it was Del Palomata and Tots Carlos from opposite teams playing really well. And I had like great interviews with them. So I was able to like really like talk about them for the game, relate, their personal stories to what was happening. And like Direct Al told me like, hey Franny, good job on your reports. And those
Mm.
feelings are always I mean, that always feels great, obviously, but also because like when you're able to get those really, really good interviews, it always makes the story so much better when the athlete plays really, really well. And
Mm.
it is like an aha moment or like a light bulb moment. It feels
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And it's nice also when like the athletes go back to you and they're like, hey, or sorry, not the athlete, when the coaches go back to you and
Yeah.
they're like, I heard your report. It was good. I
Yeah.
trust you now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I remember that Kiliana game. I don't know who they were against, but I just remember she played well in this game and they talked about it, or maybe I read it on Twitter after. I'm not sure if I watched it, but then I don't know if I heard the report, but then I remember that she had that game where she played really well. So maybe that was what you were pertaining to. But I wanted
Mhm.
to ask also the question of, you mentioned that you were very passionate with the UAP since before. So was it tough for you not to like cheer and not to be, you can't like show emotions when the team wins or loses. So how was that process for you from the beginning until you finally were like, I'm neutral na ganun.
Oh, it's hard. I can't not be an Ateneo fan. It's my
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
And I've been brainwashed since I was like a kid.
Yeah.
So you're not supposed to cheer, but then like I would sometimes get away with it as long as like, the camera's not anywhere near me and you might see
Mm.
me like, like cheering or like jumping. I think more so during volleyball because basketball, um I don't know why, maybe because volleyball felt more like a roller coaster. And it's like on a per set basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you would see me like I have pictures of me like jumping, and I'm just like, oh no, I hope nobody from the front team sees this, but it's
Yeah.
fine. Even I would say it's easier now to secretly cheer because like you're in a mask during the game. When you're
Oh,
not
okay.
reporting, so like you might hear me in the PVL like screaming, but then nobody can like see me cheering.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's really tough for me. Like, if I don't know, like if I want to work in sports media, but I can't cheer. Lalo na ako, like if it's my teams or schools, I just like start shouting here and at home. I don't
Yeah,
know if
and
the neighbors could hear it, but
my struggle the first few games was I always look too serious or frustrated.
mm,
And
okay.
that's just how I am when I watch games, right? I'm not like
Okay.
smiling an entire game, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you can relate. Like when you're like
Mm-hmm.
frustrated with the players or like you're really into it, like that's your face. And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
Franny, you have to smile when you report. You're too
Mm-hmm.
serious. You're too frustrated looking. You're just like, oh shoot, okay, I'll fix that. It was, and that was like a conscious effort. But I mean, maybe for me, I think it does help to be a fan of the teams you're reporting for. In
For
the
sure.
PVL, it's fun because like I'm a fan of each team, but
Mm-hmm.
especially in the UAAP, when you're a fan of the school that you're reporting for or the team that you're reporting for, it makes you more. I think it makes it easier for you to ask questions because you know
Mm.
what
Yeah.
questions like the fans would want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, as a fan, this is what this is who I would like to know more about. So it could work to your advantage rather.
Yeah, I agree. And when you're a fan, kasi, when you're a diehard fan of these certain athletes or these schools or teams, like you have this certain curiosity of what you want to know. So like you put yourself in the fans' perspective. What do I want to know about this player who might play well next game or who has a great matchup next game and he or she might flourish. So yeah, I understand that point. But you also mentioned nga na you mentioned a lot about basketball and volleyball, and during your time it might have been easier because there's more like leeway between the tournaments. But like last UAAP season, nag-overlap pa nga yata yung volleyball and basketball. So how was that adjustment for you na ilang weeks yun or ilang months yun na puro basketball players or basketball concepts or lang yung inaaral mo, and then sudden change, oh, everything's volleyball related. So how did that, was that easier for you or harder for you?
Um, let me try to remember. Let me try to remember. I think it helped that there was like it was end of the semester
Mm-hmm.
for so basketball and then end of the semester. So you had your break and then volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I kind of could like switch my mindset. Although admittedly, I had more time to prepare for basketball. With volleyball,
Yeah, for sure.
um, we did get to prepare, but it was easier in the sense that since you're used to reporting in front of a camera, like that side of things, like the reporting, how the process is, you could focus really more on, okay, I need to understand, I need to get to know the team, I need to get the team to trust me. And also like, okay, re studying volleyball,
Mm-hmm.
making sure like you have that knowledge in your back pocket. So I don't know, maybe it wasn't too hard because I got a lot of the technical like reporting stuff out of the way already. It was really just, a shift in the mindset.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. And being in the basketball and volleyball season for 81 and 82, did they ever like tease you that you're like the good luck charm of the Ateneo, since like I mean, hindi natapos nga yung 82 ng volleyball, pero the three competitions you were the courtside, nag-champion lahat.
Yeah, I will take that nickname with pride. um yeah, I think I'm at least for Ateneo, I think I'm the
Mm-hmm.
first it's the first time that basketball and volleyball were champions at the same time. And
Mm.
I guess people noticed that. So I mean, the nickname doesn't hurt. Coach O is super superstitious, so
Oh, okay.
he would be like, you need to be here. But for Coach Tab, it's just like business as usual.
Yeah. Yeah. That I just thought about it like last night when I was thinking about what to talk about. I was like, wow, we si Frannie, like lahat nung siya yung reporter, courtside reporter, nag-champion yung Ateneo. But before, I didn't really like think about it. So yeah, that's great. But you mentioned about going back for season 82 a while ago, and you guys did the vlogging. So for you, was that like a no doubt, or like if they invite me back, or if they want me back, you're gonna say yes because you enjoyed season 81 because of all the stories you just mentioned, na lalo na nag-champion nga sa basketball and volleyball. So what the decision process for you was pretty easy or pretty short then for 82?
Um, it hmm, was it hard? No, it was like a no-brainer, I think. Like I
Yeah.
knew like the moment season 81 finished, like I wanted to be back, but there was no guarantee that I would be back.
Mhm.
So it was a waiting game, but also just a like, hi, I'm still here.
Yeah. Yeah. How
Yeah.
how do they, I know, do they text you again like, oh, do you want to come back? How does that process work, and how much of a privilege is it to get invited back?
For us it was like they texted us that they would need us to create vlogs, and that would
Mm.
be our like re-audition. um I would it's definitely a privilege to get to come back. Not everyone gets to. There's
Mm-hmm.
only been one courtside reporter who's ever done 3 years, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
Gretchen Fulido.
Yeah.
So I think getting to do it once, you're very, very lucky. But getting to do it twice is syempre, like a dream come true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about being a courtside reporter for the UAP? How did you say was like it a springboard for your other opportunities, like you being able to create content for like Puso Pilipinas and also being part of Signal now for the PVL and all the other coverages they do. So how would you say that the UAP parang people would say, oh, just a college thing, it's just like something small, it's not a job yet. But then for me, I don't know, it's like a springboard. Like sure you don't get paid a lot or whatever, but it's like experience and the knowledge that you get.
I would still say it's a job. You have to apply for the BIR. So,
Oh, okay.
you
Yeah.
get taxed. But
Yeah.
um, it helps in the sense that you join the community and you're now part of the network.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you're able to find mentors. So I would reach out to like my mentors during the pandemic, which was a tough time because like there were no sports. I thought I was going to do sports. Couldn't find a job at the time. So I
Mm-hmm.
was reaching out, and like I mentioned earlier, everyone's very supportive of your growth and everyone wants you to succeed. So one of my mentors said, you've always had an eye for producing. Why don't you try producing with Puso Pilipinas? So in Puso Pilipinas, I was guided by, at the time, Clev Mayuga and Deneen Cruz, who were producing for the social media team of Sports in Action. So
Mm-hmm.
it was nice to try something new also, and because I was honing my skills in that aspect, and I was still talking to my mentors and stuff like that. When the UAAP came, or sorry, when PVL came around, and lucky enough that it was the same people in Signal.
Mm-hmm.
They asked if I wanted to come back, so I took that opportunity. Well, actually, I didn't take it the first time they offered because I had already committed to covering the UAAP with Puso Pilipinas. So,
Oh, okay.
but
Mm.
all in God's timing that they asked me if I wanted to do the invitational. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's great that you were talking about Puso Pilipinas and how did that start? Like what do you see? What do you hear about, like, because people see it as like content, they like the IG posts and they learn more about the sports, but how would you say that page started? I don't know what you call it, like the page, social media page, or the content creation, and how has it grown now? And because in the UAP, like when you're in the media area, like I see you there, and then I see you after the game or during the game, you get to post these photos that you were, or these snapshots that you were able to take during the game.
yeah, I'm not too sure about how it started, but it was
Mm-hmm.
really created, I guess, to be like a safe space for us to like do, to try out things that we wanted to do in terms of like media coverage. Back in the pandemic, it was really like there was a an absence of sports content, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we created like originals. One of my favorite detox was like we'd
Oh yeah,
have
dude.
two athletes talk to each other about like
Yeah.
a random question, right? And it could be anything from like women in sports to what's your biggest what if.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really nice because we got to know the athletes on a more personal level. It was also nice for me because like I got to speak to like some friends, some legends in my eyes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of relationship building in that aspect. I also got to work with Gretchen Ho on Gretch X.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it started. And then as it started to pick up more steam, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
we started, I guess, expanding the type of content we were doing. So more now with more sports like live coverage. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I remember during the UAAP we did a mic'd up. So like I would mic up like different like sports personalities
Yeah.
watching the
Yeah.
games. Those are super
Yeah.
fun. It's really just like a space, for like our ideas, anything we wanted to like do, and if we got, I mean, if our community managers were okay with it, then we would post it. And then they
Mm.
allowed us to really like try new things. So I was covering the UAAP live, thinking that I would be doing more like producing, like mic'd up. But then we
Yeah.
realized we also needed someone to take more pictures. Like we had two people on the three people team taking pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like tested in that regard to figure out how to, take good pictures of the people watching the games, of the
Mm-hmm.
fit, all of that. So it's a nice space to learn. And it's also nice to see that, the people who were part of Puso Pilipinas are getting opportunities to like, level up their skills too. I've
Yeah.
like had producers who are now producing in the UAAP, producing in the PVL.
Yeah.
Um, some people are like executive producers in Puso Pilipinas. So
Yeah.
it's like we call it like the multiverse because we're all able to still work with each other, but we also get to try out new things.
Yeah. How would you say that the Puso Pilipinas, when did you say or how did you say that they finally, gained the popularity or the traction in social media that yeah, out of social media accounts follow it now, and whenever I like a post I see the athletes or the sports personalities also supporting the page.
We worked really hard to build those relationships with the athletes because we wanted them to know that, Puso Pilipinas was like a safe space for them too.
Mm, okay.
The slogan or the tagline we used before was by the athletes for the fans.
Oh,
So the athletes are very like involved. It was nice, like talking to, like listening to Eliza Valdez talk about her experience, the Kim Fajardo and stuff like that. I would
mm-hmm.
say though, like our page really took off when it was PVL, because I would say now like the page is mostly like volleyball fans actually, but the PVL really
Mm-hmm.
helped. We started doing live streams, but also we had someone in the PVL bubble at the time who
Oh,
was
okay.
getting like these one-on-one interviews with
Mm-hmm.
different athletes. So that definitely helped us.
Okay, yeah, I enjoy the content that you guys, produce. And before I didn't even know what that was. Yeah, I think it started in the Ilocos bubble when you guys would show the games up out there. Like there were games that weren't televised, and people would complain, bakit wala sa ganito, ganyan. And then you'd see like Puso Pilipinas would show the game. So yeah, the people would like gravitate to like support the page because they'd wanna, and then they realized that the content was also exceptional. So yeah, that's great. But then you mentioned also that Puso Pilipinas it started in the pandemic when you were trying to be involved with sports. What were the other things that you tried to get into during the pandemic, whether sports related or not, that help you now with what you're doing? Because yeah, in the pandemic everything changed and you couldn't prepare or anticipate anything.
Trying to find a job, that's for one. Like imagine graduating into a pandemic and then
Mm-hmm.
it was hard to find a job. I remember I took an internship first pa nga while I was
Oh,
figuring it out. What else was I doing? I was cooking a lot, baking
mm-hmm.
a lot on the side, trying to keep sane somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I guess in terms of like sports, I think I was taking like hosting gigs on the side, whether it was just for school or um, for like small events. So
Mm-hmm.
just using that to still practice the skills needed, although it's different
Mm-hmm.
hosting on a Zoom
For sure.
call compared to like hosting in real life because you have no
Yeah.
audience like to feed off of.
Yeah.
So I think those were mainly the things. I got interested like in practicing like video editing a little bit.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Video like just small like videos, even if it's just for myself. So just
Mm.
using that to hone my skills. Or actually, maybe it was really just for fun. And in the end, I think anything you do to like improve should be fun. It should be,
Yeah.
something that you enjoy to do.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, even if you would say that it's just for yourself or you're not doing it for anything, it's like helps with your experience. Like, oh, I learned this before when I was doing a video for myself, and you'll never know when you'd need it. But then, yeah, you mentioned being there and still being involved with sports during the pandemic. Like, when it was the pandemic, since you graduated na and you eventually became a PVL insider and you moved from ABS-CBN to Signal. Like, how was that move for you and being able to now work in volleyball and being able to be with these pros now more than the collegiate athletes?
Um, you know, the different networks aside, um, I think we have the same experience, naman. If not, I mean, within the PVL, you're
Mm-hmm.
coming from me coming from the UAAP. Some of the athletes also came from the UAAP. Some came
Yeah.
from the NCAA. Some from abroad or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like the sense of like familiarity, even though it is a different league. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was nice that I could like report on athletes I used to report on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think the bigger thing to overcome is like your initial starstruck. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I first saw Mika Reyes, I was starstruck. So it was
Yeah.
really cool that I could like talk to her and like report about her. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think I had that same experience with Gia Morado, but
Mm-hmm.
Gia had already like she kind of knew me already because of Puso Pilipinas.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that was like really nice to work with them again.
Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned being able to talk with these PVL athletes and comparing it to your UAP stint before. Hindi naman uso before yung mga video call siguro or yung mga Zoom. Siguro phone call lang or text. Because, yeah, I don't know. I never used Zoom or like Skype. I don't know. I don't use Skype that much during pre-pandemic to like talk sports, or I don't see it also on YouTube or these podcasts. But how would you say that being able to talk to these athletes and communicate with them changed a lot in the pandemic? Would you say it's a good thing, like it's a bad thing, or like a mix of both? How would you say it differs now from like that early 2020 to now, wherein you have various ways to like get the stories from the athletes and coaches?
I think season 84 was definitely hard for the correspondents because
Mm-hmm.
they were restricted to Zoom. They couldn't attend practices.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely because when you're able to attend practices, you're able to understand the team a little better. There are things that you see that others don't. Um, in the PVL, I guess it's easy that I don't get to go to their practices, but
Mm-hmm.
since they are pros, they're not so shy now when you approach them for interviews.
Yeah.
Like COVID times, though, they're a lot stricter. Like some teams, you have to let the manager know beforehand, um, just
Okay.
so that you know, you're not entering without permission and stuff like that. We do take like an antigen test before each game,
Oh,
so
okay.
just to be safe because we're the ones interacting with the athletes, right? So we don't want
Mm-hmm.
to be the reason that they might get sick or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say it's other than that, like it's always easier when the athlete's able to talk to you face to face
Mm-hmm.
because then there are certain things you can't get like talking to someone
Yeah.
through a video call.
Yeah.
Certain like gestures or certain like um, micro reactions and all those things. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's how it's really changed in the pandemic and after.
Yeah. You mentioned about face-to-face interviews, and yeah, I could see like the vast difference. Like yung mga podcasts now, even the ones in the US that adjust sometimes to face-to-face. Sometimes yung interview nila na face-to-face, yun yung nagki-click sa YouTube, or yun yung maraming views because yeah, people enjoy it more. But what would you say is like an interview or something or like an interaction that you had na siguro yung player you thought at first na hindi siya mag-share masyado, or you would say na your question, the phrase, the way you ask it or the phrasing of the question really helped a lot in getting a story out of a player that yeah you felt na baka wala ka masyado makuha or yung mga generic lang yung makuha.
Um, Back in Puso P, I did a detox episode with Sean Ildefonso and Renzo
Oh yeah,
Bando.
he mentioned
So
that here. Si Sean.
Sean,
Yeah, he mentioned it here. Yeah.
Sean, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was friends with Sean, but I was not friends with Renz.
Oh,
But
okay.
I had always admired Renz from the
Mm-mm.
UAAP. But I also knew like he's kind of shy. He's not
Yes. Yeah.
super forthcoming, like with Cuento.
Mm-mm.
Um, and I don't know. I guess it was because I got Sean. Basically, Sean was the one asking the questions. It was
Yeah.
more a conversation between them and me guiding it. But that allowed him also to feel more comfortable, and
Mm-hmm.
the questions we were asking, allowed him to talk about home, talk about his experiences, which I think he enjoyed. And we made sure naman that he felt comfortable, that it
Mm-mm.
wasn't such a sterile interview. Like you could joke, you could,
Yeah.
take a
Yeah.
pause to just react. And I think that
Mm.
was such a revelation to like see Renzo Bando like open up and share all these things about his life.
Yeah, you had the same opinion as Sean because he shared with me nga na kala niya si Renz daw hindi daw magsasalita or what. Kala niya siya lang daw yung may share. Tapos nagulat daw siya na he learned a lot from what Renz said. Kasi yun nga, I'm pretty sure kahit kalaban niya si Renz, like he knows that Renz is like mild-mannered. I don't think he trash talks or anything. And then biglang, oh, he says all these stories na may matututunan ka daw talaga. And he learned a lot in the how many minutes that you had with them, and he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
he
Sean
told me
was
about.
great at like prompting the questions. I would say nga na Sean enjoyed asking the questions so much he wasn't answering the questions na rin eh. Parang he just wanted to know more about Renz.
Mm-mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He told me about it. Nga. Kaya nga, when he guested here, I was like, oh, we're done now or something. And then he was like, oh, I'll ask you a few questions muna. I was like, I'm not even the guest. But then wala lang. He just wanted to ask me. So yeah, that's a really great trait that Sean really shows. That's why nag-work yung seriously ba yun nung early in the pandemic, the one for ABS-CBN.
Seriously and really for
Really.
slam.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It really clicked with Sean because of his personality. But yeah, moving on to the PVL thing. You mentioned that you were now work for Signal and TV5. And what other what would you say are the other dreams or aspirations you want for being a part of the sports media team? I guess like, do you want to be an anchor? Do you want to be something else? You want to be more of a producer, director? Like, what do you want to be in the future?
Ooh, I don't know. I would like to try my hand at being an anchor. Mas lalo na sa basketball. Like,
Oh, okay, yeah.
I feel like that's something that's not really heard of yet unless you're Bea
That is,
Daes.
yeah. Yeah.
So she's the life peg at the moment. She also
Mm,
works a day job. So
mm,
yeah, I guess trying the anchor role is another step. Though I'm not quite ready to stop being like a courtside reporter just yet. I think there's still a lot for me to learn and a lot for me to like experience being courtside before I can join the panel.
okay, okay. Yeah, and you mentioned about being an anchor, and I don't know, like for me, I notice it sometimes. Na sometimes there's like nga stereotype, like for instance, like si Doris Berg and a few others lang yung nagiging par analyst or anchor in the broadcasting panel. Like I'm pretty sure there are women who are have more knowledge or they could like what do you call it, be more articulate with the basketball terminologies or jargon or whatever happening in the game. But I don't know if the women do get the opportunities, whether here or abroad. But then for you and being in the broadcasting panel, do you think like the typical stereotype really does exist? And what would you say is the way to like try to eradicate it or try to remove it, that women do have like a place here in the broadcasting panel and they could also talk sports or basketball and these other sports?
I don't think it's limited to just, the panel, even like on the producing side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But what's nice with the people I work with is it doesn't really like matter if you're a guy or a girl. They give you the opportunity, and I've met some like really really great like women producers. Um, Although I will say though, basketball in general and in the Philippines is quite male dominated.
Yeah.
Not necessarily on the broadcast side of things, but I mean, if you go on Twitter, like
Yeah.
it's a bunch of dudes like
Yeah.
talking about basketball very passionately, right? So
Yeah.
I guess to me, it's more of like having or starting that conversation about, women in sports.
Mm-hmm.
And also maybe thinking about what we can do to change certain, I don't know if you'd call it stereotypes or maybe certain things that we got used to or that we allow in terms of like maybe it's misogynistic behavior, maybe it's um you know what I mean. Like it's you have
Mm-hmm.
to we have to start that conversation, and there are a lot of things that also need to be addressed in the institutions that you know um, that govern over these leagues. Um, there's a lot of women, I would say, right now trying to do their part, trying to speak up and change the narrative, I guess. But more than just one person, I think it's an institutional thing, or like it's something that everyone has to work towards. I'm happy to say that like on the broadcast side of things, um it is a very supportive environment. I would say maybe the girls or women interested in, let's start with basketball, maybe not to
Mm-hmm.
be afraid, or to um not to be scared to like speak up and to go for it, because if they want it and if they truly are deserving, they'll be able to have that opportunity, like Bea Dias, for example,
Yeah.
or maybe even just as an athlete like Jack, who's in the
Mm-hmm.
States right now, right?
Yeah.
It's not, your gender shouldn't um confine you to certain roles or to certain job descriptions. There's so much more that people can do. And I mean, if you look at volleyball, right, you have women and men anchors and analysts.
Yes.
So why can't we do the same for basketball and for any other
Yeah.
sport?
Yeah. Yeah, for instance, like sometimes when sila Bea, yeah, that is talk, or when sila Doris Burke talk, like sometimes I learn more. I mean, no offense to like the others, but then sometimes they know more when what they're talking about. Maybe they study more, they have more dedication. I don't know. It's just me. It's just my opinion. But then, yeah, I wanted to ask you this question also because I interviewed Denise Stan like maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, and she's a courtside for PBA for like numerous years na rin. And I wanted to ask you also, like, did you ever receive like verbal abuse or like immense bashing from the fans? Like, you know how like the stereotype or generalization that people say na, pang ano lang yan, like, magaganda lang yung courtside, ganyan. But then, people don't know that you guys actually work hard and you actually know the sport now and you have the relationships with the players and how to get the stories. So did you experience that and how did you overcome it? And also like how would you like educate people about it?
Yeah. I don't think it can be avoided. Everyone likes
Oh,
to have an opinion, right? Um, in basketball, I've met guys who would react like, "Oh, I didn't know you knew what a box out was." I'm like,
yeah,
"Okay." And
yeah.
then like um and I've also met people who are like, "Oh, I didn't know that you guys write." Like, it can't be that hard, right? Like, they just give you what to say. It's like, no, we have to write everything like on the spot, like during the game. And if
Mm-hmm.
you don't, then maybe you're not that good a reporter, because how are you reporting stuff that's
Mm-hmm.
timely? But there are all kinds of like bashing that you'll receive on Twitter. Like, I've heard like people comment on my appearance or the way I talk.
Yeah, I don't like
um
those stuff. Yeah.
it comes from like all angles, right? But I
Mm.
think what's important is you remember which voices and which opinions matter. That also
Mm-hmm.
applies to the compliments, right? At the end of the day, the only voices that matter are the people on the broadcast team, um, yourself, how you think and speak to yourself, and I guess the teams that you're reporting on, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you allow yourself to succumb to the bashers, to the hate from everything on the outside, you're not able to focus on what really matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're too preoccupied thinking about how you look, or maybe proving all these other people wrong, when the broadcast team was already like putting all their faith and trust in you, and they already know that you can do it. You don't have to prove anything to them, you just have to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad though that there are all these types of bashers. I would say, um, the ones on Twitter can be kind of petty when it comes to like looks, the way you
Mm-hmm.
talk. But then when it comes to like, people thinking you're lesser than what you really are, or in terms of like your knowledge, your ability to do the job, of course those hurt more. But at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, they're not the one doing the job.
Yeah.
They're just commenting on it.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they wouldn't be able to do the job as well as, the people who are actually doing it.
For sure.
They just, have a lot to say.
Yeah, I agree. That's why even yung mga, alam mo yung mga articles that you see on social media na who are the pretty wives of the players, mga ganon, who are the pretty courtside. I'm like, ano yan, naubusan na talaga ng content. Like, I wouldn't, even if I was like the editor of the Lasallian and naubusan na ng content ng pandemic since there were no events, like, I wouldn't go down and like discuss those kinds of topics in the Lasallian or even like my personal podcast or something. So, I don't know. It's really tough to like mitigate it or like eradicate it. So, yeah, I
Mm-mm.
don't know what we could do. But like with your whole journey and everything that you discussed the whole episode, and what would you say that people should learn from your journey, and what you want to for them to keep to them and apply it also to their own venture, whether it's sports related or something else?
I guess for me, it's that there's always something to learn, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's from what you're doing or from who you're talking to or who you're working with. You can always learn something. What's nice about my journey in sports is like I learned so much from the broadcast team in terms of like how to report, how to conduct myself, how to do interviews. But then on the athlete side of things, I learned about their stories. I
Mm-hmm.
learned what makes them passionate. I learned what motivates them. But I also learned like, okay, how to be a better friend, how to better engage with these people. And you can always take something from the things you're doing, whether you're consciously like thinking like, okay, I have to learn something, right? Whether you think about it or not, there's something to take, and that ultimately will add to your own growth in the long run. So it's, I guess, if anyone's like can take anything from my journey, it's really just having that mentality of like growing, of being like a sponge, really, just absorbing everything that you can.
Yeah, that's really something also I'd wanna like continue practicing. Like honestly, I'm still not the best in it. So yeah, I just wanna, continue learning and continue growing, especially like I'll graduate in like a couple of terms in LaSalle. So yeah, before we end, I ask a couple of general questions to all the guests that I have on the podcast. So one of it is, I'm pretty sure that you know that the athletes in the States, like during the NBA bubble, the players were more vocal with social and political issues, like heading to the November elections that year. They were educating people how to vote and yeah, telling them which precinct to go, etc. And then here in the Philippines, when this podcast started, I'll tell them like, oh, we're more laid back and we're more shy to express our opinions because it may have its consequences, like on social media or I don't know anything else. But then I realized like towards the 2022, like when the elections were approaching, people and in the pandemic when there were social issues in the country, people were more vocal, especially people in the sporting world. I mean, those are the ones I follow, like media personalities, athletes, coaches, and everything. So, what's your opinion on these personalities being more active with social and political issues, and using their platform and amplifying their voice to educate your followers and those people that support you?
Well, I always I something that we say, I guess, is something that something that we keep in mind is always that athletes are more than who they are on the court. Same could be
Mm-hmm.
said for the coaches, for media, sports media personalities. We're more than just what we can offer to sports. We're more than just what we talk about in sports, right? And at the end of the day, it's these political issues or these things that concern like the rest of the world that also affects us. I mean,
Yeah,
for example, ABS-CBN was shut down,
yeah,
and we were very vocal about how much that affected us, how much that affected the athletes. Athletes also spoke up about it. So
mm-hmm.
we can't contain ourselves to just a sports bubble because that's not the world we operate in. Our
Mm-hmm.
worlds aren't just sports. And like I mentioned earlier, everyone's doing something else also.
Mm-hmm.
So aside from like sports, we're people first, we're Filipinos first, or what the things that happen to our country, the things that happen to, I guess, the planet, those all
Mm-hmm.
affect us. And we wouldn't be able to do sports or be passionate about sports if we weren't, you know, talking about or concerned with everything else that's going on.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I admire like the people that they show, not necessarily like you show the candidate that I support also or something, but like more of they educate the people why it's correct or what the platform is and what they want to pursue if they win this election or whatever. So yeah, hopefully the people get to gain more knowledge and not believe in like the trolls or something. So yeah. So for the next question, if you had the opportunity to have dinner with five people, dead or alive, who would you invite?
Oh my gosh. Wait, okay. Naomi Osaka, that's one. I think she's really
Mm.
cool. I really liked her documentary on Netflix.
Yeah, same, same.
Um, oh man, I would like to have that's one. The second person would be probably Kobe Bryant. You know,
Mhm.
that's he's a different beast in itself, right?
Yeah.
I would like three more people. This is hard. Um, who else? Three people.
Anyone, like he can make it like people from the 1800s or 1900s. I don't know. Anyone, national heroes, whatever.
I had an answer for this before. Hold on. I would also like to have dinner with what's um I would like to have dinner with Audrey Hepburn just because I think she's really interesting and I like her old movies. Two more. Would love to have dinner with my Lola. She passed
Uh,
away back in 2020, so would love to have her cook again and like eat her food. And then I guess
mm-hmm.
for the fifth person, I mean, we just talked about it. So maybe like I would like, regardless of your political beliefs, but I would like to speak to like Lenny Robredo
Oh,
because
okay.
I
Yeah.
think it would be interesting to like understand also everything that she went through running for the 2016 elections and then her
Yeah.
term and then running for the 2022 elections. I think that's just there's a lot to learn from her but also to really understand everything that she went through.
Yeah, it's a great list for sure. And yeah, people would saying funny answers like Hitler or something like they don't want to know like what kind of mindset that guy had during
I'm
his
I'm I'm
time.
good. No, no thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, those are the funny answers that I remember because it's not like one person just said it. It's a lot of people that said it, so it's just funny. But yeah, for the final question that I'd want to ask you, so since you know that I invite people through social media and email and anything, because yeah, I don't really have that many connections yet. When I started, I just tried to like message anyone. So who would you suggest that I could invite here on the DVD show? That would be have a great journey also. Or masarap lang makipagkwentuhan.
Have you tried Boom?
Yeah, I interviewed him before, like
Boom
one of
is
the first
solid.
episodes. Yeah,
Boom was really great because like I told
yeah,
him back in 2020 that I would really want to work with him again. And he told me like it will come. And then we worked together in
yeah,
the PVL and it was like a full circle moment.
yeah.
I would say to interview. Have you tried RJ Abrientos?
I haven't had him yet, but then yeah, I've messaged him before. Yeah,
RJ
I'd want to
School.
interview him also, since I don't know if people know his story and stuff.
Calls me ate, but RJ School. It's not even that young. Not much younger than me. Um, yeah, I would say RJ's one to talk to if you want to get to know more people in sports, like on the back end producing.
Oh yeah,
Definitely talk
I
to
haven't had.
maybe Clev Mayuga, or
Mm,
if you want, you can also try Nina Alvia. She's former UP courtside reporter. She
mm.
produced for Puso P. Now she's also producing for the PVL and UAAP.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I remember her reporting for UP. Was she like season 80? I think season 80.
Season 78, 79.
Oh, 70. Oh no, because 80 was Agatha, right? Or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or
oh, okay.
who else could you interview? Coach Yuri is quite a school
Oh yeah, I have an
because he's
interview him for
the San
new
Benda
coach.
coach now.
Yeah, he just adjusting with the team. Like I listened to his interview with Migs, and he was Migs Bustos, and he was like, "Oh, I've been with the team for like a couple of weeks lang. Like he doesn't know much about the players yet." So yeah, those are great suggestions. And yeah, thank you so much again, Franny, for joining me here on the podcast. And before you go, do you have any final message?
Um, Not really. No. Support Puso Pilipinas. Not actively producing right now, but always showing them love. Um, you can find me on Instagram at Frannie Reyes.
Mm-hmm.
On Twitter at Frannie Reyes with two S's.
Oh,
Um, I guess that's it. I don't know. Support the people in sports definitely, but also remember that they're people first. So, yung mga bashers dyan, calm down.
yeah, PVL bashers. There are a ton. I interviewed Jem Ferrer from Chocomucha. That
Ate Jem.
yeah, she had a lot to say about it. Yeah, that's great.
Always.
Yeah. So yeah, before you go, is it okay if we take a picture?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'll take it from here. One, two, three. Okay. Thank you so much, Franny, for joining me here on the podcast. And yeah,
No
stay
problem.
safe.
Thanks for